Welcome back. So today we delve into our final chapter of crankbaits. And it's one I've kind of hummed and hawed about because it's a little bit tricky, but it is going to come up for all of us this later in the summer, possibly into the fall. And sometimes it's even a very good technique to use when it's really, really cold in the winter, if you can get the right bait to do it. So what we're talking about today, deep running crankbaits. Right, so we've covered shallow running like square bills, we've covered the medium running. Now we're getting into the deep running crankbaits. And guys, this is, although it's a more advanced type technique, it's a technique that we can all do. It does require a little bit of skill being able to read your electronics on your boat. This is not a technique I would recommend using from the bank unless you are super, super aware of the area that you're fishing in. It's going to be too tricky. So let's get into it. All right. Let's talk about the tackle. Now, guys, the majority of the time with this technique, we are talking about big baits. Let me see if I can grab one. Big baits. So that's a 3/4 of an ounce bait. It's not we're not talking about little DT10s here. Do you get smaller baits that can run deeper? Yes, you do. But when we say deep running crankbaits, I'm talking about stuff that's going to run out to 25 foot. I'll say that again. I'm talking about stuff that's going to run out to 25 foot. And that one that I showed you, not a big one. I'm going to put a picture up on the screen a little bit later on. It's called a 10XD. It's made by Strike King, and I'm sure there are other companies that make big, huge, stonker, deep-running crankbaits, but this mother is about that size. And I don't even know how much it'll weigh. When I put it up on the screen, I'll put the weight. It's over an ounce. It's a big honker of a bait. So, will our 7-foot medium-heavy casting or spinning rod get it done? Yes. But it's not the ideal tool for the job. And as I explained a little bit earlier on, when we started this year we're kind of getting into the techniques that require specialized rods. So for the purpose of our exercise today, although I will put up a picture of a 10XD, I am not talking about 10XDs. That requires a whole different type of cranking rod. We are going to talk about similar baits to what I've shown you now. So baits that are going to get down to, let's say, 20 foot, if they fished on the correct gear. So what are we looking at here? Guys, we're looking at 7'3" plus length, the longer the better, honestly, up to 8 foot. Medium heavy to heavy moderate cranking rod. So it's a specialized rod. We need that moderate to absorb the dig of the crankbait when we're winding it down. We need it to absorb the hit of the fish when we're cranking it down. And we need that moderate for the fight of the fish. Now, guys, I'm not going to say you're not going to catch smaller fish on these big honker baits, but this is one of those techniques where we're going to go out in the deep and we're going to look for big fish most of the time in their summer haunts. So post-spawn, they'll get out, they start recuperating, maybe on the first break away from where their spawning areas are. And then as the temperature starts to climb, regardless of where you are in the world, so it's relative to where you are in the world, as the temperature starts to climb, those fish start to move deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper out of their summer haunts. And the majority of lakes that you're going to go to in the world are going to have somewhere that you can consider a summer haunt. Shallow grass lakes, places like Florida, even in places like Lake Okeechobee, there are still shell beds and slightly deeper areas that those fish are going to get out to. It's a little bit different in that scenario, but we're talking about generally speaking. Okay, back to the tackle. Too much rambling as usual. 7'3" to 8 foot, medium heavy to heavy cranking rod, moderate, good. What about line? Okay, middle ground here, guys. There are bigger baits. You are going to be fishing them around some types of structure, but there is kind of a playoff here with the line. If you go too heavy, the baits won't run as deep as you want. And if you go too light, you snap off these big baits on structure or on big fish if the line is not good. So 12 to 15 pound, I'm going to leave it there. I will say that my line that I use for these big crankbaits, and this is not a technique that I do a lot, but when I do this, 12 pound fluorocarbon. My personal cranking rod is a 7'6" medium heavy moderate, and I use 12 pound fluorocarbon, and it has always worked fine for me. Some of the lakes I fished in South Africa had fairly heavy timber. Remember, guys, the lakes, there's no natural lakes in South Africa to speak of. Most of the lakes are man-made. So where I lived in the KZN province, a lot of the lakes, even in deep, deep water, had timber in them because they were flooded valleys. And when we speak about dams, we're not talking about the dam wall like you would in the US. We're talking about the dam is the lake because it's a man-made lake. We call them dams in South Africa. I know I haven't made that clear on a couple of videos. Okay. So 12 pound fluorocarbon. This is not really a technique that you'd want to do with a spinning rod, but you can do it with a spinning rod, with the right spinning rod. I don't know of many 7'3" to 8 foot medium heavy to heavy cranking spinning rods, but I'm sure they exist in the world. For me, because this is a nice big, they're usually heavy baits, 1/2 ounce and up. If you are uncomfortable with casting reels and you are wanting to learn, this is probably a very good technique to learn a casting reel with because of the weight of the bait. So you can really crank down your spool tension and your whatever the casting controls are on your particular brand of reel so that the line is barely coming off when the lure is hanging off the end of the rod, and fire it out there, and as you get more and more comfortable, just loosen and loosen and loosen it. And this is probably the technique that will help you learn how to use a bait casting reel. Okay, we've spoken about the rod and we've spoken about the line. Now let's talk about the reel. We want a slower reel, but we do not want a slow reel. So my reel of choice for this style of fishing is a 6.2 to 1. It allows me to recover line quickly if I need to, but it also allows me that constant wind and keeping that crankbait down in the strike zone for as long as possible. Let's talk about, before we go to the close-ups, let's talk about where we want to throw these things. Okay, this is a tricky one because all lakes and dams are different. So what we're talking about here is deep water. Water from, say, 14 foot to 25 foot. I'm sure there are crankbaits that run deeper than that. That's what we're going to concentrate on right now. A middle ground would be, say, 18 to 20 foot. That's what we are talking about with these big crankbaits. Summer haunts for bass are things like river channels, which would be a lot of the time in reservoirs or dams like we have in South Africa, flooded valleys, because that's going to be the deepest section of that valley is where the river channel runs through. Ledges on a lake, so let's say for example like the TVA lakes, a lot of those lakes have got ledges on them, main lake ledges. It's where the lake just drops away and it's a big flat area where you have stair steps in the middle of the lake which run, or in the middle of the bay or the lake or whatever, which run into the river channel, and it creates a ledge or a long flat area in deep water. There may be structure on that, things like stumps, rocks, big trees that have come down with the current and then possibly sunk into that area. It could be a sunken boat. It could be a bridge that has been demolished and it's fallen into the water. Anything like that. That's the type of thing that you're going to be looking for in that deeper water. Now, when you're learning this technique, what I suggest you do is start shallower, say around 14 to 16 foot, and get a feel for what the crankbait feels like when it's hitting the bottom or hitting off structure. It is very, very different to shallow water. It's got a completely different feel. The lips on the crankbaits are different. We'll look at that when we go to the close-ups. And when they bounce off stuff, it's sometimes when they deflect, and that's the big word here, guys, deflect off cover or structure. That's normally when you're going to get bit. When that crankbait is not tracking straight, when it hits something and goes off to the side, the fish are going to pound it. We'll talk about the retrieves a little bit later. I have a very specific way that I retrieve big crankbaits, and it's just for me, for what I do. So that's the type of thing that we're looking at. Anything that you can find in deep water constitutes an area that you can throw a deep running crankbait. And what are we trying to emulate with this deep running crankbait? It's always going to be some species of baitfish and maybe a crawdad. But I'm going to go with baitfish as my primary choice on this thing. If you look at all the different colors and stuff that are available for these deep running crankbaits, and I'm sure you can get deep running crankbaits that look like craws, guys, but the majority of the time we're talking about some other baitfish pattern, or we're talking about a pattern on the crankbaits that trigger bites, colors that trigger bites in deeper water. Okay, good. The one thing that you must remember about when we're talking about bass moving offshore, a lot of the time in the summer when the water starts getting too warm in the shallows, the bait fish will move offshore as well. And that's what the bass are following. So whether it be blueback herrings, shad, shiners, not so much the shiners, but definitely the shad, that type of stuff, crappies, they will move offshore. Panfish species like bluegill and whatnot, they may move slightly further back from the bank when it gets hot, but the majority of the time they stay shallow. So we're talking about the more pelagic species of baitfish. Okay, good. I think the close-ups are not going to be very long today because I'm just basically going to show you a few different types of deep water crankbaits. But what I think we'll do is we'll go to the close-ups now, then we'll come back, we'll talk about the retrieves a little bit, and time of year, and what the bite feels like. Yeah, let's do that. Let's go to the close-ups, and then we'll come back and we'll finish it out. Right on, let's get into it. So, deep running crankbaits. You guys can see here, it's a pretty straightforward deal. Huge lip on most of them. I'll show you a couple of other ones just now. Pretty big bodied bait and big hooks. This is a pretty early one, guys. This bait I had when I was, 18 years old. So it's an old dude. This is one of the original Rapala ones, or Rapala ones. And I think it was called a Down Deep. But not a lot has changed. Now, obviously, Rapala's got the DTs, the Dive 2 series. So there you would look at a DT16, which means it dives 216, or a DT20, a bait like this. This bait, if I remember correctly, used to get down to around 15, 16 foot on 10 to 12 pound line. In those days, it would have been mono because we didn't have fluorocarbon then. Pretty cool. Okay, moving on. So here's a more modern bait. This is a fat-free shad made by Bomber. Pretty big bait. You can see again, same type of deal. It's like a coffin bowl that goes into a very big rounded area over there on the front, and the bowl comes out the front of the bait, which makes it dive straight down when you start to retrieve it. And then here's one of the OGs. This is just a custom painted one. This is a Norman DD22, and you can see what's written on the lip there, if we can, 15 to 18 feet. And that's what it'll run. I've never got one to run to 22 feet. I certainly have got one to 20 feet on 10 pound fluorocarbon. There's a little custom painted DD22. Okay, guys. There's a different shaped one. This is one that I've painted, and I've put some effect on in the clear coat to make it look like it's not flat. This, I think, is a copy of an OSP bait. I have got this one down to 17 foot on 10 pound fluorocarbon, confirmed on the Echo Sounder, or the Fish Finder. So that's one of the ones I paint. And here's another one I paint. I don't even know what crankbait this is. This was a crankbait that I found in a lake, and I just painted it and clear coated it. So another deep diving bait. It looks a little bit like a DD22, but it isn't. So I have honestly no idea what it is, but just another one that I've painted. All right. Let's talk about the colors a little bit. So you will see that I really only have two types of colors of the deep diving crankbaits. I have a fish type color. This is a yellow perch one that I painted up for Minnesota. And then this one is some kind of a bluegill color, custom painted bluegill color. And then we have the reaction type color. So this is root beer. Again, this is a bomber fat free shad. So orange on the bottom, chartreuse on the sides, and then green pumpkin-ish. And then green pumpkinish on the top. Here's a different one. Pearl on the sides, pearl belly, chartreuse on the top, ghost stripes, red eyes. And then a more metallic type color. This is used to be a very popular color. I don't know why it's not popular anymore, because it is still a killer color. Dark brown or black on the back, gold on the sides, and orange on the belly. Just a fantastic all-round color. So you can see all the similarities, guys. Big baits, like I said, I'll put that picture of the 10XD up. That's probably double the size of this, and this is a 3/4 ounce bait. Big honker trebles, big bull, big eyes, big bait. Pretty cool though. And many, many, many different brands and colors and stuff to choose from. Probably one of the most important, all of them are pretty good, guys. I'm not going to say that one is better than the other. They are obviously, mine are better because I made it. But, you know, a big bait like this is a good place to start. A bomber fat fish shad. Bomber's been making crankbaits forever. They know what they're doing. You don't need to mess with it. This thing is going to run 15, 16, 17 foot, maybe even a little bit deeper. This is probably a bait that I would choose. They are very reasonably priced. The components are fantastic, and they're well painted, and they're hard wearing. So the most important thing as far as I'm concerned with deep running crankbaits, hooks. It's the same for most hard baits, guys. If the hooks feel dull, change them. And the way to test it, let's see if we can do this on camera here. You be careful, hold the treble hook in your hand, run it on your thumbnail, and if it doesn't stick, you see how that's sticking? Be gentle, guys. I don't mean jam it into your thumbnail. Just run it along your thumbnail. If it doesn't stick, it's blunt. That sticks. I'm not pushing down very hard there. That sticks. I don't even know if you get these trebles anymore. These are TX3 trebles. But you could use something like a Mustad KVD Elite Short Shank WG treble hook, or Berkeley Fusions, or Rapala VMC Redline hooks. Their treble hooks are very good. Okay, that's it. Deep running crankbaits. Make your choices wisely. Otherwise, you will end up like me with 3 boxes of these. It's a lot of fun. Remember the rules, guys. He who dies with the most lures wins. Okay, good. We're back. So as you saw in the close-ups, this is not a small bait. And it has big trebles on it, guys. So parents, this is probably not a bait that you want to start your children on. These treble hooks are big gaff hooks, and they're going to hurt somebody if they go in. And also, guys that are learning to fish, be super aware when you throw these big crankbacks. I always say fish side to side on the boat and not back to front. You whack an outboard engine with this, one of two things is going to happen. One, you're probably going to snap the bill off your crankback, or two, you're going to leave scratches in the paint of your outboard motor. Nobody needs that. So fish side to side. And also, if you fish side to side, the chances that somebody's going to be behind you are very, very minimal. So just keep that in mind, guys. Right. Time of year. We've touched on it a little bit through the video, but this is primarily a summertime deal. When those fish move to their summer haunts, this is how one of the ways that you can go and target them in their summertime haunts with these deep crankbaits. And it's a lot of fun. It can be quite tiring because obviously in most places in the world in the summertime it's hot. So I know you always hear on other videos about other sports and stuff. Guys, stay hydrated, okay? It will wear you out. But there's a couple of ways to get around that. The ways I suggest are have some other kind of bottom contact bait, maybe a jig or a Carolina rig, or both, on the deck and your deep cranking rod. And when you start to feel a bit fatigued or sweaty, or you're getting tired of it because obviously the bites can be a lot less in the heat of the summer, just put it down. Put it down. You don't want to be frustrated. Just put it down. Pick up the jig, relax. You can have something to drink. You can have a snack. You maybe sit on your chair a little bit and just slow the fishing down. Just slow it down. You don't want to get frustrated with the technique because it's so hot. You know, you've got to try and stay cool, maybe jump in the lake. Make sure you wear good protective clothing in the summer, all those kind of things, because it is a very labor-intensive technique of fishing. All right, good. However, there are times in the winter, particularly in areas that don't get quite as cold, where this can be a super, super, super effective technique for targeting winter fish that are living in their winter haunts now, their deeper haunts, which a lot of the time can be the same as the summer haunts. You know, in the fall or the autumn of the year, those fish are going to move shallow again to feed up for the winter. And when it starts to get cold, when they feel the cold, they'll start moving back. And a lot of the times in the summer, obviously they're going to move shallow to get sun in the morning, that type of thing. But if it is pretty cold, they'll stay deeper, and you can go and target them with these deeper running crankbaits, which can be a lot of fun in the winter because as opposed to the summer, with the cranking, you stay warm. So it's a win-win. So same type of structure and cover that we spoke about for the summertime, just go and look for that in the winter and do it differently. But what you can do is you just slow your retrieve down. Make sure you're making contact with whatever's on the bottom, and then just slow it right down. Just make that bait move slower. Can be very effective. Weather doesn't really affect deep running crankbaits, in my opinion. In fact, the extremes of the weather, the heat and the cold, can be the thing that can make it a good bite. So when you're fishing those depths of water, other than a mega, mega cold front, there's nothing that's going to affect it. Obviously, they could be tricky to throw into the wind if you get a good stiff breeze blowing. Some of them that don't have weight transfer systems and stuff like that, it could frustrate you, but they are big, heavy baits. You should still be able to throw them across a wind or quartering across a wind. Not too much problem. Especially on the gear that we've spoken about. You know, it's a big, beefy, heavy rod. You know, nice, thick line, 12-pound line. You can fire it out there. Time of year, weather, not a huge factor here. If you can find fish in deeper water and they're closer to the bottom, this is going to be a very, very solid technique to tackle. Retrieve, you know, when I was 25, I could probably have burnt one of these. In fact, I do remember using a bait. It was a man's 20 plus fishing for smallmouths in the summer in South Africa and burning a bait and being fine after doing it for 6 hours. Not sure that I'd want to do it now. You young guys, have at it. But it's not something that I would want to do. So my technique, I get that bait out as far as I can, wind it down till it makes contact with whatever's on the bottom or the bottom. And then I like to take up the slack and then I pull the bait. So I can, when I pull the bait like that, I can feel it going doom, 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 off whatever's on the bottom or hitting the bottom. Once I get it to there, take up a bit of slack and I do the same thing again. You can obviously speed that up if you want to. But for me, that technique of retrieve has always been the most effective way to fish a deep running crankbait. And it's a fun way to do it as well. It does not tire you out as much as burning them. Now, I know that there is a case for burning big crankbaits. Absolutely. I know that. But when you're learning to fish a deep running crankbait, this is probably going to be the way that you want to do it. So you fire it out, wind it down until you feel it hit the bottom or whatever's on the bottom that you're over. Take up the slack, nice pull like that, boof, 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 boof. So you get to here, take up the slack, do it again. And what that does is it allows you to keep your bait in the strike zone for as long as possible. You can think yourself, when you're burning a crankbait, you fire it out there, it hits the bottom, you're burning, 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 and then as it starts to approach the boat, that bait is coming straight up to the boat like that. So your strike zone is a lot shorter. Another one of the techniques that you may or may not have seen people do is called long lining. And what they'll do is they cast the bait out. They will drive the boat on the trolling motor as far away from the bait as there is line on the reel. That's why you often see guys that perfect this technique using reels that can hold a lot of line. And when they've got as far away as they possibly can, they just start winding. It could be 100 yards, it could be 75 yards, and it's called long lining. It's another technique, and it's a very effective technique, and you could absolutely do that if you wanted to try that. What about the bite? It's a little bit difficult to explain the bite of a big, deep running crankbait because there is quite a lot of drag on the line already. If you consider a bait like a 10XD, it's almost like fighting a 2-pound bass, just winding the thing back in. So a lot of the time when you're cranking in deep water, you'll be cranking, winding into it, cranking, winding into it, cranking, winding into it, and you'll just feel there'll be a movement in the line that doesn't feel like the crankbait. And what's happened there is the fish has hit the bait and it's shaking its head. You do sometimes get a very positive crankbait bite, but in deeper water, it's normally it doesn't feel right, and when you lift on it, you feel the fish moving already. Now, we've already spoken about the tackle that we use for this type of bait, so you can understand yourself. There's none of this going on with deep water cranking. It's wind down, maybe a couple of pumps just to get the hooks into the fish, and start fighting the fish. And the rod and the line and the reel, the whole setup is designed to fight those fish in deeper water. That moderate action allows the fish to dart if they want to dart. When they get close to the boat, we often speak about the tearaway. And that rod and reel and line setup is designed to deal with it. Guys, a lot of the time when you're fishing these big baits like this in deep water, you are going to be catching larger than average fish. I hope that is always the case, but a lot of the time you're going to be catching larger than average fish. So it's a very easy thing for me to say that, but I'm telling you that is the case, particularly in the summertime. And sometimes in the winter, if you can find them in their winter haunts. So be aware of that. Don't horse the fish. Don't try and horse them when they're at the boat. Best thing that you can do is get yourself a rubberized landing net. We spoke about it early on the channel, particularly for crankbaiting. It makes life a lot easier. Do not get nets that have got small eyes. if you think you're going to do a lot of crankbait fishing, and for any fishing, you get the heavily rubberized nets with the bigger eyes. The bass that we are fishing for, friends, are not going to fall through a hole in a net that size. So if the net has got eyes on it that size, get the rubberized net that size. And your boat partner or whoever you're fishing with, and get them to net the fish. You don't have to horse the fish at the boat. Just net the fish calmly. Put the net in the water, you bring the fish to the net, your fishing partner nets the fish for you. And another thing as well, when you're learning this technique, and the reason why I say net the fish, you do not want these big treble hooks anywhere near your hands when they're in a fish's mouth, guys. Net the fish, get it in the boat, take the hooks out with the pliers. Don't use your hands to do it. You don't need to do it. Just gently use the pliers to take the treble hooks out. Photo, kiss, release. Done. That's all we need to do. Deep water cranking, guys. Deep running crankbaits. It is a very good way, if you do not have high quality electronics on your boat, to learn different areas of the lake, deeper areas of the lake, because the crankbait will tell you how hard the bottom is. And I know that sounds a little bit strange. I am telling you, it is a fact. You will feel the difference between when a crankbait hits a piece of wood, when it hits some rock, when there's mud. You can feel it instantly, particularly if you're using fluorocarbon and a good quality rod. I hope this video will encourage you all to get out there and try deep cranking. It can be a lot of fun, and it can also be very frustrating. But as we've said in the video, when it starts to frustrate you, put it down. Put it down, because I want you all to carry on doing this. It is a very, very good technique to learn. I hope you've enjoyed today's video, guys. I've enjoyed making it for you. Hope to see you all next time. Thanks for watching.